In 1983, God used a group of believers with a vision to begin what we know today as Fellowship Baptist Church. In the 30 years since its beginning, God continues to use people with vision and a passion for His work to be a blessing to the greater Tampa Bay area and around the world. Let's take a look at the history of Fellowship and God's hand of blessing on this church.
In November of 1983, a meeting was held in the home of Mr. and Mrs. Clarence Drake to discuss the vision of planting a new church in Temple Terrace. On December 1st, Scotty Drake led the first meeting of the Fellowship Baptist Church in the Recreation Center of Society Park Apartments. However, that was only the beginning of the vision Brother Scotty had for this church. Within a month, the 35 members of the fledgling church began meeting in a rented storefront on 56th Street, which only cost them $100 per month.
The first anniversary we had was in that strip mall. And we were shooting for a big day. And I was getting ready to teach Sunday school, and I'll never forget Cliff, as he come walking in. He said, "Hey, Scotty, preacher," he said, "somebody just pulled in the driveway that gives us 300. So we had 300 on our first anniversary in that strip mall.
And under Brother Scotty's leadership and constant reminder that it takes 3 to thrive, the membership grew to 111 charter members, and Fellowship Baptist Church was officially organized under the authority of East Sly Avenue Baptist Church in April of 1984.
If you even desired in your heart to worship the Lord and serve the Lord, it didn't matter. Didn't matter what had happened in the past, didn't matter anything. Just come and worship with us. And that was really the way Fellowship was founded, I think.
By 1985, the rented storefront property was no longer able to meet the needs of the church. So the property of the Northeast Baptist Church on 109th Avenue in Tampa was purchased for $200,000. This was a time for everyone to pitch in and make the property our home. Our first missionary conference was held, and the vision was well on its way. To further meet the church's needs, the church brought on another visionary leader, Cliff Frink, to be the first assistant pastor in 1986. Under the leadership of Brother Scotty and the assistance of Pastor Cliff, the church constructed a new 6,000 square foot auditorium building on the 109th Avenue property, which was completed and dedicated in December of 1988.
I believe that a big percentage of our church is really open to other people coming in and joining with us. I don't think there's cliques here, I really don't. And then, of course, I think we've had 3 great preachers, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
7 years later, in 1995, Pastor Scotty Drake was led of the Lord to focus his work on world missions. And so he stepped down from the pastorate of Fellowship Baptist Church to begin leading Help Ministries, dedicated to the support of national pastors around the world. Brother Scotty's bold leadership and love of missions is to this day still unmistakably in the DNA of Fellowship Baptist Church.
Knowing that the church goes beyond the 4 walls that are in here, and that there's a world out there that is dying to know something better than what they've got right now. And especially bringing in the different missionaries and their perspectives, and not so much just being the ooh, ah, wow, I wish I could visit there, but just hearing what they go through and seeing how faith-based they are and how much they rely on God for every little thing. And it encourages you. At the same time, it makes you want to get out there and makes you want to do more in that area.
After Brother Scotty's departure, through prayer and deliberation, the church was led by the Lord to call Pastor Cliff Frink to step up to the position of senior pastor. Pastor Cliff, with passion and a renewed vision for the church, immediately began leading the church to retire its indebtedness. And the church successfully completed a campaign to raise the funds and burn the mortgage on the 109th Avenue property by December of 1998. Although the church was healthy, strongly supporting missions, and firmly committed to the Word of God, its growth had reached a standstill for several years. As Pastor Cliff began to study the reasons for stagnation in the growth of the church, he came to the conclusion that the church's location was hindering what he knew God intended for Fellowship. With that in mind, a new property was sought for the church where it could grow and fulfill the vision God gave it to enlarge the place of its tent. God presented a piece of undeveloped land for the church to purchase on U.S. Highway 301 in Thonotosassa.
told us about his dream for this property. And I told him, I said, boy, you're making a mistake. I said, people ain't gonna come out in them woods to go to church. So he said, no, Daddy, the Lord told me that's the place.
The pastor's vision for this property was shared with the church, and a unanimous vote was cast to purchase this property in October of 2000. Through a series of miraculous events and Pastor Cliff's determined vision for the church, the 30-acre property was purchased for just $200,000. After selling the property on 109th Avenue, Fellowship held services in Greco Middle School on Fowler Avenue in Temple Terrace, looking ahead to the day it could move into its new home on Highway 301. In July of 2001, the church broke ground on its new property and began construction on its first of 2 new buildings for worship and education. In June of 2002, the church officially dedicated and moved onto the 301 property, meeting in what is now the Fellowship Hall. However, that building was hardly large enough to contain the still-growing church, and in September of 2003, another step in the vision was begun, and ground was broken on the 3rd building, the church's current auditorium. In August of 2004, the church dedicated and moved into this new building and continued to grow under Pastor Cliff's leadership and vision. God had clearly blessed Fellowship Baptist Church with great leadership, loving members, and beautiful property on which to meet. However, in 2006, the church's faith was put to the test. In May of that year, Pastor Cliff was diagnosed with lung cancer, and yet throughout his illness, he urged the church to continue to choose faith. Sadly, on October 6, 2006, Pastor Cliff, at just 40 years of age, went home to heaven to be with his Lord.
Well, one of the things that God taught me through all of that is that God gives you the strength to do what you need to do when you need to do it. And it was all through His strength. It was definitely nothing of my own, but it was a hurting time for everybody. But God through that gives you strength and just taught me lessons that wherever He takes me, He'll give me the strength to do what I need to do.
I really had to just let go and let God do what He's going to do regardless of what I think should happen.
I just feel very blessed that God has been so good to us. From the time Cliff and I got married and through the church and the amazing opportunities we had, the people we got to meet, the people that impacted me as a young person and as a young wife, the support that I had after Cliff passed away, the fact that God has given us the freedom to come back to where things started and be a part of it and have my kids experience fellowship as they're older. I feel really blessed. If you spend a lot of time thinking about what you've missed out on, you lose the blessing of what God's giving you today.
Still in a cloud of grief and uncertainty, in May of 2007, the church called its 3rd senior pastor, Mike Grover from Jacksonville, Florida, to continue to move forward in the vision God had for his church. Under Pastor Mike's patient leadership, the church has continued to develop into a solid ministry that is impacting its community and the world. The church has continued to reach out, and in January of 2011 began holding 2 worship services on Sunday mornings to allow for even greater growth in its current facility. Pastor Mike and his leadership team's strong emphasis on fulfilling the mission of reaching others and living as devoted followers of Jesus Christ has challenged the church to spiritual growth and discipleship. This has resulted in several years of growth, with over 70% of the morning worshipers attending Bible fellowship classes on a weekly basis. This has created a caring community of new believers and dedicated lifelong followers of Christ as well. A milestone for fellowship, by the grace of God, was in November of 2013, when the Lord allowed the church to retire an $890,000 debt during a time of great economic uncertainty. Through God's grace, the visionary pastors and devoted people of Fellowship Baptist Church have become a strong and passionate group of believers, committed to growing God's church one person at a time.
Family. That's the best best way I can describe it. Family, you know, good family.
And I think fellowship is also a place not just to come and worship, but it's a place for life. This is where I met my wife. This is where my children were baptized. This is where we do life, and it's just been a blessing.
You know, it's exciting and bittersweet to look back and see how God has led our church through many obstacles and blessed it with perseverance and dedication. And it's just as exciting to look ahead to what God has planned for our future. You know, Jesus told his followers that they were to occupy until he comes. And with the plans for a new auditorium underway, a retired debt, a growing and a committed body of believers, this is truly our day. It's our time to experience his grace and his saving power as we stand firmly on God's inerrant, unchanging word. We're a testimony of God's faithfulness and a living example of what he will do with a people who are willing to do whatever it takes and to leave the glory to him alone.